So I want to thank you, Dr. Martin of Broward Schools, for setting up this call with this panel of illustrious principals, and for those that have jumped on this call. Thank you for those that were not able to jump on. Hopefully you can listen to this. So basically, to jump right in, I just want to say that this project was originally inspired by this book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I worked as a sales engineer. Just some quick background information on me, and this book was sort of a Bible when you would walk in to interviews. If a sales manager could very well ask you if you'd read that book, and if you hadn't read that book, the interview would be over. So reading books like this became a second education for me, and this was one of the books that had a really big impact on me. How to Win Friends and Influence People, probably because I was making the mistake that is the thesis of this book over and over and over again. God knows I've made many mistakes. And the basic premise of the book, if you go into any sales manager's office, you'll see it in his or her library. The basic premise of the book, which is the basic premise and the nexus of the idea for the formula, is that if you want anyone to do anything for you ever, you've got to show them and convince them that doing what you want them to do is going to get them what they want in life. Someone like myself, who was arguably a spoiled kid and whose mother would do everything for him, I would just ask people to do things, and they'd be like, "No, I'm not doing that for you, Bintel. I don't love you as much as your mother." And I would be very confused. But when I read this book, it really gave me perspective as to the basis of how I would present myself as a salesperson. And to that point, the formula, which is my book, my sophomore effort as an author, is based on that premise. After hearing my wife's war stories about how kids wouldn't pay attention in class, as she was an English teacher in a somewhat at-risk school district in New York, it just felt natural for me to say, hey, if you want the kids to come to school and study and do something that they don't want to do, which is painful, you got to show them that doing that is going to get them what they want in life. So I think we can all agree that every kid, white, black, or any other color, wants to have a money machine. Any kid and any adult. So that is the basic theory, and that's the reason why this works in schools, is because we don't tell the kids we're teaching them engineering and finance and investment banking and all that stuff. On the surface, coming in, we tell them we're teaching them to make a money machine. So after I wrote the book, my wife said, hey, this is not enough. We can't just bring the book into schools. We need to turn this into a curriculum. So the mixture was, the thought process was, let's mix, and I don't know how I came up with it, but to mix entrepreneurship with design engineering. And the genre, I found out later that the genre that I thought I'd created was something called eSTEM. And the thought process is that because of, not to make anyone uncomfortable, but because of racism in America, theologians believe that teaching black and brown children entrepreneurship is not just a wish list education model, it's a civil right. That every group that's come to America and brought itself out of the depths and grips of poverty and capitalism and racism, or whatever sort of ism, has done that using entrepreneurship. So by mixing STEM engineering and entrepreneurship, we could get the kids to focus in on the North Star of all engineering, which is called two things: a disruptive innovation, which is the top of the technological food chain, creates more money than any other phenomenon other than war, usually created by engineers, unbeknownst to me. I didn't even know this. And something else called a unicorn company, which happens to be the complete and utter mindset of everything that goes on in the technology capital of the world, Silicon Valley, right? And that is only taught to Ivy League schools, at Ivy League schools for the children of the top 1%. Black children have no idea these things exist, yet these disruptors are wreaking havoc throughout the world and putting companies out of business. So like Amazon is going to put 50% of all the malls in the country, they're going to close because of Amazon. And this is the mentality of these engineers that become billionaires and even trillionaires, like Jim Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. And they even have internet disruptors, right? So I know black and brown children don't know that. As a black man myself, who happened to be an engineer, went to Northeastern, I didn't know it. I worked in the industry for 30 years. I had to figure this out through hanging out with the entertainers and the rappers and athletes who use these disruptors to misguide your students in the schools. I knew that if I told that to black children, and if I could present engineering really simple, because as a sales engineer, that was my job, I was a sales engineer, I would have to go out to companies and explain really high-level technology to CEOs and CFOs about their companies in a very simple way. They say, as a teacher, if you can't explain something that's really complex, if you can't explain anything simple enough for even a child to understand it, and you don't really know it, and you're not a good teacher, right? And as a salesperson, we have to educate our customers. That's what this video is supposed to be doing, right? So I knew, in terms of Dale Carnegie's, if you want children to come to school and do all this for you, teaching them to make a money machine and teaching them about disruptive innovations and the top of the tech, teaching them all these things would blow their mind, and they'd be like, you want me to come to school? If you teach me how to make this money machine, I'll do whatever you say. And that's the basic theory of mixing entrepreneurship with engineering. Right now, black and brown children could care less about engineering. But if you mix the entrepreneurial component, then you can create a tidal wave of interest in engineering, because what's in it for me? Billion-dollar company, trillion-dollar yacht, mansion, right? And that's what's in it. So we teach the kids about creating disruptive innovations and unicorns, what goes on in Silicon Valley, and so that they can take themselves to the land of the IPO, initial public offering, which is when their companies go public and they become a billionaire in one day. And so that is incredibly seductive. It's exciting. It's aspirational, which even the kids today, they are aspirational. And the rap music is heroic, and it's aspirational. It's arrogant. It's everything that these tech CEOs are. It's the same mentality. So what we're doing is using these, the allure of technology and making billions, and pairing it with the arrogance and aspirational aspect of rap music and this culture that we live in that's bad, but arming it with something that is aspirational, that will take them exactly where they want to go. Because right now, even the kids in gangs, they think they're stars and celebrities, right? So to do this mindset is fueled by three different personalities. Not a split personality, but a tri-personality, where all of these great entrepreneurs that do this have the ability to discover something called value, engineer value, which is indicative of this young lady in the middle, and then sell value. Those are the three mindsets that we're going to literally operate on your students and pour those three sensibilities into their head and get them to be able to accomplish this. Because unbeknownst to me, being a salesman and an engineer gave me the ability to be this tri-mentality person, right? So basically I stumbled upon this money machine by accident. My first boss gave it to me, and for the next 30 years of my career, I ran around looking for it, not knowing that my first job had already given it to me. That's the irony of all this. I chased after it for 30 years when my first job, my first hiring manager had given me this, and I was wildly successful, went to Monte Carlo, did all kind of crazy things, was running around chasing after people, not knowing, thinking I was chasing after the entertainment industry, when really I was chasing after myself. That's the terrible irony of this for me. But for you, for the schools, we're going to turn your kids into the ultimate scientist that can discover value, the ultimate engineer that can engineer value, and the ultimate salesperson like Steve Jobs, the best sales engineer ever, who can sell value instantly, bingo, bango, bongo, right? They say at the Ivy League schools, they say that we teach the kids to present the Steve Jobs way of presenting. It's actually a thing. They actually study it in schools, and that's what we're going to do in the throughout the year and throughout the curriculum. If we're fortunate enough to work with you, that's what your kids are going to turn into. Because right now they don't know the difference between a scientist and an engineer, but after they come out of our class, they'll know that distinctly. Now we're starting to sort of get into it. This is a very condensed version of the formula, but it's really designed to excite the kids. A formula for money, which nobody else has. It's a real engineering formula. There are other formulas just like it. Money is equal to value over time. The question becomes, obviously, what is value? But this really primes your kids up if they go study engineering. There's formulas for distance. There's formulas for power. Many of them are very simple like this, and they're a function of time. They're divided by time. But the question then becomes, well, what is value? Value is a product or a person's ability to create a product or themselves cure pain for the world. And they are called pain points. There's only 4 of them. Even though there's millions of products, all of them can be put in one or all of these 4 categories. This is the basis of the entire world economy. As outlandish as that sounds, every body on earth is trying to buy and sell products that protect themselves or their children or their loved ones from those 4 pain points, as we just saw in that previous slide. And this is what so money is really pain relief. And that's what the kids understand. So it further legitimizes the fact that you don't need to be hurting people and trying to inflict pain. You need to be curing pain. And what we're doing with this is immediately, almost instantly, reinventing the value system of your students to themselves, which is what everybody wants. We want the kids to be able to add value. Value is such a thing that some companies, like Apple, for instance, add so much value to society. They make it so much money. They're like a small country. Right? And so this is why disruptive innovations are so deadly and so lethal, and this is why this is such coveted information, because people don't like competition. They don't want our kids out there creating Fortune 500 tech firms like this, as creative as we already are. That's the last thing they want, because these CEOs that I used to work for, they hate competition with a passion. The Department of Education was created specifically so that Norman Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan would control competition, not just for black children, but for all children. All right. So we tell the kids to create disruptors to disrupt these people. And that's why, it's literally like warfare. It's like corporate murdering corporations. The things that these CEOs fear the most of some young kid sitting in some college, creating a disruptor. But unfortunately, your kids are obsessed with inflicting pain on each other, which is making your life difficult. We need to show them that the people who are really making money, like doctors who make millions a year, are curing pain for society. All right. And this is all part of the indoctrination, which makes your job as an educator a lot easier, a lot less disciplinary issues in the school if you can enforce this mentality. So the question is that everybody's looking for: what is value? Value is, again, the basis of the entire world economy. And there are all these different terms that will work and run your students through so that they can see what value is, right? The greatest value investor, Warren Buffett, he's the greatest value investor because he understands. This is one of his famous quotes: price is what you pay, value is what you get. So anytime your students hear fair market value, value proposition, value add, value chain. All right. We saw before that you're going to see, I don't know if we saw it already, you're going to see value engineering, value, and adding it, creating it, selling it is the key to financial success, no matter what industry you're in. And so that just gives your students the ability to understand industry on a broad, non-specific level. It makes them global economic citizens. And, none of the other competing programs that we compete with in the STEM space understand what value is, understands that engineers are the ones that create it, and understand how to intertwine it into a comprehensive engineering curriculum. If you have a program that is not explaining what value is, your students are at a disadvantage. So more importantly, what really gets cool is that the students understand that their ability to endure pain so that they can graduate sets them up to be seen as viable CEOs to major Fortune 500 companies, because the companies are going to say, if you can't even stay in school and graduate on time, why would I trust to pay you $8 million a year to run my Fortune 500 company, right? Because so the kids right now, they believe that the pleasure of dropping out of school is more severe than the pain of staying in school and then becoming successful in that way later, right? They're hedonistic, and they don't understand this. There's no way to explain this to them other than explaining what value is first. So if no one ever explains that value is in pain relief, they'll never get to this level where they can be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. They don't know what value is. It's just, it's like a mystery. It's some invisible entity that they don't even know, but they know what it is when they're buying it from someone else. And that's the problem of poor communities. They understand how to buy other people's value, but they have no idea how to create it. And it all ties in with persistence and staying in school and learning how to engineer and STEM in this entrepreneurial context. So if your programs or your academic curriculums don't take an understanding of what value is on this granular of a level, it will forever put your students behind the 8 ball. Now, as an engineer, they always have a proof, right? And so you can just take this graph here, which is something the kids will also learn about graphing. Graphing is a whole language in financial literacy and engineering, in every business. At the top level is the C-suite, the CEO, CFO, CTO, Chief Risk Officer. They all talk in terms of graphs, and these graphs have different shapes, right? But so this is basically a graph showing the timeline of a product and how long a company can continue to sell it and make money off of it over time. The x-axis is always the time, and the y line, or the horizontal line, is always the value. So just that quick, your kids can start to learn how to read graphs. Just that quick. I didn't know what these were. I was in Northeastern studying engineering. I didn't even. You think they're going to stop and explain to your kids what these graphs mean and how to interpret them? They never did. They just talked right past you and showed you the graphs. The professors and engineering professors are not going to tell them this. Never. They don't want them to know. Why would they want to teach those kids, your kids, to be more successful than them? They're not going to do that, right? But just to give you a proof that what I'm saying is true, on the timeline, this is what and I remember Dr. Martin said, that he said, most of the principals that he works with really always talk about how can we give the kids an innovation-centric mentality towards education and better still, technology. Technology innovates faster than any other industry. That's why they call it big tech, right? If you look along the x-axis right next to the time, you'll see that the first type of innovation is called disruptive. That's the first one. But look how many more innovation types there are, right? Look how many more. And the more innovation, going through all of these stages of innovation, keeps a product selling over the course of 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 years, right? Nike innovating constantly, doing all these things. Starbucks, all of these major companies are hiring their engineers to innovate like this, right? Look in the middle here, value engineering. How are you going to engineer value or scientifically discover value or sell value if you have no idea what value is? You don't. You're not, right? And that's why black and brown children are not playing at that level, because they don't know what value is academically. They're only teaching certain people this. I just got lucky and was a sales engineer. I got really lucky, but they didn't tell me what I know. What they do is that they just try to tick at you and tell you that you don't know as much as you do know, because they don't want competition, right? So not to belabor the point, but through some of the tools that I'm going to give your students in this class, they're going to understand and we're going to practice doing all of these types of innovations. I'm going to teach that, and the secret is the language of innovation. This is a big secret, is in computer coding and logic, something called conditional logic. That is the language of innovation. And incidentally, 95% of the tech billionaires that are creating these disruptors learn computer coding. They don't teach logic and logic statements in electrical engineering until your last 2 years. So you don't know. If you drop out at Northeastern, if you drop out in the first semester, Northeastern had an 89% dropout rate in the first semester because they're purposefully teaching it like this, right? Not keeping secrets. If you drop out in your first semester and you don't get to the final junior and senior year, you'll never know what logic is. And that happens to 90% of the kids that go into an engineering program. But your kids in junior high school and even elementary will know this. So when they get to college, God willing, they already know it before they get there. And those are the most dangerous kids, the ones that know all this before they even get to college. They're just hanging out in college, hanging out with their buddies, working in their dorms all night, trying to create a new disruptor. That's how engineers become billionaires. They're bred in elementary school. So Dr. Martin agreed that we should present this as a STEM 6-week pilot summer camp to your schools, and these are some of the the things that the students would go through. These would be the focus of the lesson plans, the 6 lesson plans, and maybe more. But obviously, creating a disruptive innovation. The kids would do interviews for the C-suite to start their own companies. They would work in teams, and one would be the CEO, chief marketing officer, chief risk officer, chief financial officer. Chief risk officer obviously is someone who is going to be able to use the business model and advise the team about risk, which is very important because the disruptors that are polluting the schools are trying to convince the kids to do things that are at risk, and they don't know that there's a difference between at-risk behavior and model behavior. So we get a chance to really delve into that, and that ability for the kids to be drawn to risky behavior is making your life difficult as an administrator. They do sales contests so that they can understand how to sell, what behaviors people buy. At-risk model behavior, again, exercises. They design a unicorn business model, which you're going to see in a little bit. They even do TV commercials, which is usually always a fun, business, fun lesson. They love that one. They act it out and they film it. They do television commercials for the Super Bowl. And then they do a business plan. And because they understand how business models are designed, they understand what value is, they can fly through a business plan very quickly because of the business model that you're going to see is almost like a cheat sheet for writing a business plan. All the other kids in programs that I've consulted for, the kids are stumped. They don't know what the different parts of a business plan are because they don't have a model to use as a cheat sheet. And the kids, especially the black and brown children, they can't even. Literally, I am always hired to write the business plans for the kids. The teachers will bring me in and pay me. The schools will bring me in because they're like, oh, we have a competition and our kids haven't even begun to write their business plan, their business plans. Can you come in and help them do that? And they will literally have me come in and I'll just write the business plan for them, and they'll be shocked that I can do it in the space of a few days. Because they don't have a business model, and the curriculum that's telling them to do it hasn't given them a business model. They don't have any definition for a business model. So how on God's green earth are you going to expect high school kids to do that don't even understand what value is? It's impossible. It makes no sense. And they're doing this because they know that the schools don't know, and so they can take advantage. Your kids will just fly through any of those other programs like Project Lead the Way, or there's another one called I forget them. I've worked for a number of them, but they do these business plan competitions, and the Asian kids always win. They brought me in because the Asian kids kept beating the black children, and they brought me in for 5 days. I did their everything for them, and they came in third place in 5 days. So could you imagine if we gave them this for an entire semester? They would beat everyone. Now, for you teachers and administrators who are saying, okay, well, what are we going to get for buying this pilot program? What are our kids going to come away with? These are all the 21st century literacies and outcomes that your students would get after they leave the class. They would have all of these literacies that they would be able to say, I'm familiar with this stuff. And these 21st century literacies, as I'm sure all of you educators know already, are more of a predictor of success in high school, junior high school, elementary, and even in college and in life than the outcomes you get from just doing your reading, writing, and arithmetic, the 3 R's. All right. These 21st century skill sets and literacies are a better predictor of success in life than being able to read, write, and do math. So as I'm sure you all know, and so your students this is what you get. Like when you buy food and say if you're going to eat a sandwich, you're not going to be hungry anymore. That's what you get. Your hunger is gone. This is what you're buying for your students if we're fortunate enough to become a partner of your school. Now we're telling the kids we're going to teach them to build a money machine. They need tools to be able to do it. These are the engineering tools that we give your students so that they can make a money machine. It encompasses the engineering and the entrepreneurial component. And this is a quick trade secret here, a little bit more information. I don't really want the competition finding this out. Then they copied and said that they came up with this idea, but this is copywritten by Bandit Publishing, so no one can steal this. All forms of engineering have these 4 elements, all of them: chemical, mechanical, electrical, computer programming. All of them have units of measure, which you've already seen, the value system, right? This is a unit of measure, and in electrical engineering you have power and voltage and ohms and current, right? Mechanical engineering, you have force and torque and friction, right? So units of measure are always a part of every genre of engineering. You have modeling, right? There's always a model, and there's always some math to track how fast or what the rate of speed that the model does its work. And most important, there's always some sort of logic, right? Engineers are all about logic, and that's why the computer engineers are the ones that are creating 90% of the time these disruptive innovations, because their engineering genre is the language of logic. It's called conditional logic. One of the most famous logic statements is the what if statement. No, excuse me. If then. The if then logic statement is part of every computer programming language, right? And it's basic. It's even in psychology. A lot of the doctors I talk to in education say that, yeah, we studied the if then logic statement when we were getting our master's degrees in psychology. The reason being because in psychology you're supposed to reinvent yourself. You're the product, all right? So these are the 4 elements these are the 4 tools that your students would get that are consistent through all forms of engineering that they would use in this class to build their money machine. None of my competitors know this, and none of my competitors are giving your students these tools to do the work that they are asking them to do, whether it be create a product or write a business plan, or none of them. So they're asking the students to do something that they themselves don't know how to explain how to do. And that's just unfair, and that's more the reason why our kids who are way behind need these tools to assist them so that they can build their machines in a timely fashion. Now here's a demonstration of just how the tool works, the logic statement works. The big secret is that the language of innovation and the thought process of innovation is in logic, and that's why these computer programming engineers are able to make these disruptors more rapidly than others. So this is just a demonstration of how this logic statement works. It's like a jingle that your students could basically sing or just recite, and they'd be able to understand, as outlandish as this sounds, how any innovator came up with the ideas for their products. As you see, it takes into consideration the thought process of the scientist and the engineer, and it is proprietary. It is something that I came up with after working in the industry and just seeing the different revisions. So this one is just basically doing demonstrations of how money was invented, because money is a product and it's bought or sold, it's a commodity, how a few different internet disruptors like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and MySpace, it shows the evolution over the history of the last 30 years of how social media platforms have been so disruptive and how they've turned their creators into billionaires and what value they offer society. And so your students can use this and do something very important as called reverse engineering the thought process of other great disruptors. And basically we're transcribing the thought process of disruptive innovation. Nobody has that. We're the only one that has anything like this. And again, this is proprietary. So all of your students would be able to just create disruptors, ideally, on demand. Here's another quick demonstration on another one of the tools, the business model, which allows the kids to write business plans and also reverse engineer the evolution of an actual company. So we're using engineering tools to not only make the disruptor, but to make the unicorn company. And unicorn companies are essentially business models. And we're saying that we have the elements of a company that you can use to make any company, right? And this business model shows the evolution or shows an endorsement deal with Shaquille O'Neal. And if you've ever seen him do the Icy Hot commercials, right? Cure the pain, Icy Hot, right? That's the value of the product. So this is just a demonstration of how that business model is designed, and CEOs get paid millions and millions of dollars, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, to design the business models of their companies to make sure that they're moving faster than the competition. And now, because of this sort of visual cheat sheet, your students can do that too, right? Again, none of Virtual Enterprise was one of the companies that I consulted for. They were asking the kids to write business plans without an understanding of what a universal business model is, which is absolutely ridiculous, especially for kids in high school and junior high school. It's absurd. It makes no sense. They'll never get it done. And that's why the principals would have to hire me to come in and clean up when the teacher didn't know how to help the kids do it at the final hour, because I don't think they know how to do it. So because they don't even give the kids a pre-lesson on what a business model is. They just ask them to write a. So in conclusion, I really want to thank Dr. Martin, obviously, for putting me in touch with all of you good folks and setting this up for the administrators that came and saw this. This is going to be, I guess, a more comprehensive review for you, and for the administrators that were busy and weren't able to make the meeting. This will be this will hopefully help you to catch up. Hopefully you have time to watch the entire thing. I think in summary, I believe that there's a need for this. There's a definite need, not just academically but behaviorally. I think this is a clear and concise cure. It addresses the problems that are in the Black and brown community head on. Not just from an academic perspective, but from just a behavioral perspective. A lot of the pain that the schools are going through, it will be directly addressed with this. It's best if all of the administrators throughout the entire building understand that this is the direction that the school is going in, and are able to iterate that and speak to the students in terms of this when they're walking the halls, which would just set the entire school up to have a certain sensibility and consciousness. And basically we would give your kids, if we're fortunate enough to work with you, an Ivy League mentality where they would be able to compete at the highest levels and fulfill the mission statements of a lot of the schools that I hear when I make calls to the schools individually. I really appreciate your time. I look forward to talking to each and every one of you individually. If you'd like a more in detailed look into any more of the other tools, I'd be more than happy to show them to you. And I sincerely look forward to working with each and every one of you. I'm anxious to see what your kids do with this, and hopefully this our mission is to create a seismic technological shift amongst Black and brown children, and I think if we work together we can absolutely do it. So thank you, God bless, and look forward to talking to all of you soon.